what the Church of Scientology is so afraid of.
This is What Are Your Crimes, Mark? Yes, what are your crimes, Mark? Did you beat your wife? Did you kick a pup? We'll find your crimes and rake it up. Did you laugh at Hubbard? That's not nice, and now you'll have to pay your price. So what are your crimes, Mark? What have you done? Oh, it's too late now. Fair game's begun.
Good evening and welcome to another wonderful evening here of broadcasting on Xenu TV, seen throughout this entire sector of the galaxy. I'm Mark Bunker, and I wanted to talk tonight about a film that was made in 2000 in Clearwater called The Prophet. Some of you may have seen it. It is available on YouTube. Not a great quality copy of the film, but somebody has it out there. I think it's in another country. I just took a look at it, and it seems like somebody in distant lands where they're not afraid of any copyright violations has it up there. But it's definitely well worth checking out, if just for the novelty of it. This was the first movie that was essentially made about Scientology, and L. Ron Hubbard, thinly veiled. I just want to say hi to the folks who are coming in here. Fuzzy Pink Handcuffs, Kelly, nice to see you, Kelly. Parasocial audience, hail Xenu and hail Princess Xena, he says. There you go. So The Prophet. I found out about The Prophet. Sandy, hi, Sandy. Nice to see you. The Bombs. I found out about The Prophet shortly before they were going to start casting on it. I was working in, hi, love Maddie. I was working in my office at the Lisa McPherson Trust in Clearwater. This was a group that Bob Minton put together to help folks who have been abused or defrauded by Scientology. There were 4 of us at the beginning, and I was the multimedia guy. I always had a camera with me, shooting every piece of footage I could and putting that up online. And Bob came into my office one day and said, okay, I got to tell you, we are making a movie. And they weren't telling anyone about it. But I found out at the last minute. And I said, hey, can I read the script? And it was being produced. It was written and produced, written and directed by Peter Alexander, who was, probably still is, in charge of the Totally Fun Company, which was a company that specialized in shows and rides at places like Universal Studios. I think he had a hand in the Back to the Future ride and so many other things. I went to videotape a live show there, a stunt show they were doing in Chicago at Great America, Six Flags Over America, rather. Way back in, I think, 99. So I got to know Peter and Patricia, Peter Alexander, the writer, director of the film, Patricia, who was the producer of the film. And they came to Bob and said, ooh, here's a great idea. Let's make a movie about L. Ron Hubbard. And this was the one thing that was a potentially money-making prospect for Bob. He spent like $10 million helping people who had been abused by Scientology. $2.5 million went to this film. So when he told me about it, I said, "Can I read the script?" And I had to go over to Peter's office at the Totally Fun Company in Tampa or St. Pete. I can't remember which one, but I had to go there and read it in his office while he was watching me. So, you could not sneak a script out like I was going to. But when I read the script, I realized, oh my God, this is never going to work. This is horrific. And I went back and I told Bob my concerns with the film. It was cartoonish, and in fact, after the film came out, in some industry periodical, there was an interview with the director of photography, who was quoted in this article as saying, "Well, I lit the movie with these bold, garish colors because it really seemed like a comic book to me." And yeah, okay, well, that makes sense. It's not the best tone for a tell-all about Hubbard, but I suppose you could make that choice and make it purposely and have something with a comic book spirit to it. This was just crappy. It was a crappy spirit. No, this is not Sandy. Is this the one starring Hoffman? Absolutely not. That's the master. Philip Seymour Hoffman was brilliant in that film. This was a very, very low budget independent film made in Clearwater. And it was years before The Master. As I said, this was 2000 when that movie was made. And The Master came around 15 or more years later. And actually, Hoffman was around, just starting his career around that time. And I thought he was terrific. So when they were talking about casting, I said, well, Philip Seymour Hoffman would be perfect for this. And I don't think he'll do the film because he's incredibly in demand right now. I think he had just come off Boogie Nights with Burt Reynolds. No one famous starred in this film, Mairzy Doats. There was a fellow who was cast, and I can't think of his name right now. But one credit that he had was for a commercial you might see on late night TV. In fact, I found out about it because The Daily Show did a segment on this commercial. It was an infomercial for the Assist. And what the Assist was a stick that you could help wipe yourself. So it's the Assist. And this was actually on TV as a product that you could buy. And this guy who starred in the film was the spokesperson on that commercial. So that was his claim to fame. I can't really say anything bad about the guy. He wasn't really a Hubbard type. And he was no better or worse than anyone else who was in the film, as it was all local people, amateurs, essentially. I'm sure there are people with some credits, but if you see the film, there were no breakout performances, is what I'll say. And so I warned Bob that the script is terrible. And I remember there were things in there like the film opens with everything set in South Pasadena with the witchcraft goings on at Jack Parsons' estate. You know, the L. Ron Hubbard character knocks on his door and says, hey, I see you got rooms to let. And then, like Hubbard, he starts to ingratiate himself with Jack Parsons, who knew who Hubbard was and was very impressed that the science fiction writer he read showed up at his South Pasadena mansion, where he was renting out rooms to artistic people. He didn't want anyone straight-laced. He wanted people who were bohemian types. And Hubbard said, well, that's for me. That sounds like much more fun after World War II than going back to my wife, who was living in the Midwest with Hubbard's parents. I said, I'll just stay here in Pasadena, and I'll live in this mansion with the devil worshippers. So he became involved with the Satanist goings on there. And this is the most bizarre part of Hubbard's life. And when you talk about it, it just sounds like, oh, come on, you're really piling on, Hubbard. Now, I mean, you're making stuff up. No, this is an actual legitimate chapter of his life, where he gets involved in these sex magic rituals with Jack Parsons and Parsons' girlfriend. So they're actually, having incantations as they're each having sex with this woman, trying to create the moon child, the spawn of Satan. And again, mind-boggling. Later on, when the Church of Scientology was asked about this period, their cover story was, oh, yes, well, Ron was sent in there by the government to break up this black magic ring. Yeah, he broke it up by screwing the guy's girlfriend, stealing his girlfriend, and marrying her. But before that, convincing Jack Parsons, you know what would be great, Jack? We're here on the West Coast. I'll head over to the East Coast with your money, and I'll buy a ship, and we'll bring it back here, and we'll sell it, and we'll make some money off of that. And I'm going to take your girlfriend with me. So Parsons gave him his money, gave him his girl, and then Hubbard went to the East Coast, and there was no word from him. Parsons had to track him down, and I mean, it's just astonishing. But this is how Hubbard broke up the black magic sex ring. So that is the way the movie opens. And it's not a good way to open the movie. If you want to talk about Hubbard and Scientology, even though you called them L. Conrad Powers was the name in the film, and Scientology became the Sci-Mind Institute. The entire film was what, I don't know if any of you remember Milton Berle. Milton Berle was the Mr. Saturday Night. No, well, that was Billy Crystal's name. He was Mr. Television. Milton Berle was a big live TV comedian who was a monstrous jerk, apparently. I never found him funny, but he why did I get onto Milton? Forget exactly where I was going with this, but Milton Berle. I read his autobiography when I was much younger, and he talked about the fact that he wanted all his jokes in the show to be lappy, and he explained that he tells his writers that I want you to put the jokes right in the audience's lap. I don't want them to have to think about this. Make it obvious. You don't go for any of this subtle satire stuff that Sid Caesar was doing on your show of shows, for God's sakes. I want this to be lappy. And that's what this movie script was. It was lappy. It was really written to the lowest common denominator. didn't give the audience any credit for having any smarts at all. And it really worried me. And there were things in there that this was the thing that I found most remarkable. There's a scene where throughout the film, if you haven't seen it, L. Conrad Powers starts to hypnotize people with a little pendant that he swings in front of them. And he convinces them to do his bidding. And at some point in the film, he does this to Jack Parsons. You're getting sleepy, sleepy. 1 year from now, you are going to go out to your work spot in the barn, and or garage rather, you are going to blow yourself up inadvertently with your chemicals and everything. And then it cuts to 1 year later on the screen, and you see the garage go boom, and okay, all right, there's some fine filmmaking right there. So a dopey idea to begin with, but also throughout the film, they wanted to get across the point that there's hypnosis in Scientology. And you can make that point that, you know, when you're doing these drills, you kind of are put in a little bit of a trance and you're more receptive. But to boil that down to throughout the movie having the Hubbard character going, you are getting sleepy. You are going to give me all your research into the mind and forget that you created all of this stuff. I'm going to steal it from you. You know, it was horrible, not well executed, even if it had been a good idea. But also it was saying that Scientology works because look, you can hypnotize people and they'll do your bidding. And I don't think that they really saw that was a point that they were getting across in the film. I think they were actually quite upset when I kind of pointed out that, you know, you're kind of saying that this works. I'm just checking to see if there's anyone, you know, I haven't been reading the comments here. If there's anybody who has something to say that I'm sure Kelly will put up on the screen here for me to see. So I explained this all to Bob and how concerned I was that if he went forward with this script, it was just going to be a complete waste. And he said, well, Mark, you're going to have to tell Peter that. You know, Bob didn't want to confront him. He didn't know anything about show business. And he felt, oh, okay, you know what you're talking about. You talk to him. Well, Peter didn't want to talk to me. And you know, I certainly was trying to be gentle with my comments. I think the one point that he took from my conversation with him after that was, you know, I said, I'm not sure that I understand people's motivations in here. You know, all you need to know about Hubbard comes from the affirmations. Now, don't know if you're familiar with the affirmations, but in the 40s, L. Ron Hubbard sat down and wrote these affirmations that just are him telling himself in writing, you are strong. Women find you lovely. You're a conqueror of men. All of these, every single thing that he knew was a flaw in him, he was bucking himself up. So you could see how Hubbard knew what a mess he was. And I tried to get across the point to Peter that, you know, this is something that you should maybe try to work into this, you know, or at least give an understanding of who Hubbard was. And I think there was like a little mention of it, but you know, the script only got a little marginally better. It was essentially the same movie that I read in the first draft. There were some minor changes, but the problems that existed in the script stayed in the script to one extent or another. And they, Peter and Patricia, invited me to come and watch the auditions, and I was, very interested in seeing who was going to be the talent base for this in the Tampa area. And I had, spent a lot of time on stage acting and done some TV and film work and commercials, stuff like that. So I had a little experience acting. But I wasn't going to audition for it. I just wanted to go and watch. And when I got there, they kind of forced a form on me and said, "Come on, Mark, you gotta audition." Okay. So I auditioned, and I read, because there were actresses there who were reading for Hubbard's second wife, although he never had a second wife. And I remember reading a scene with them a few times just because there was nobody else that could read a scene with them. But I did not consider myself auditioning for the movie. They, however, after I had some negative things to say about the film, they said, "Oh, Mark's just insane. He's mad because we didn't cast him in the movie." Well, no, having that on my resume would not have been the career maker that I was praying for. In fact, I dodged a bullet. But it was a fascinating experience being around this. I actually, instead of me wanting to be in the film, I said there's a guy that I worked with in L.A. right before coming here. He's got his own theater troupe, and I stage managed to show that he acted in, and he was incredibly impressive. He reminded me of Kenneth Branagh, and I thought, he's got talent. You folks should read him. Of course, he was in California, and the production here is on the East Coast. So I got him to send a tape, but the tape he sent was like little bits on sitcoms, and he looked much younger, and it was not the appropriate material. And they went, pfft. But I actually think he could have done a really solid job if they had cast him. So was I upset that I wasn't cast? No. Although I think, they missed an opportunity by not casting this other actor. And I would tell you the actor's name if I could remember. I haven't talked to him or seen him since 1999. But he, his performance stuck in my mind. So, so the film gets underway. And I occasionally visit the set. I went there a couple of times to shoot a little footage behind the scenes, and we're going to take a look at that. But I knew what a disaster this was in the making, so I didn't want to really spend too much time there being depressed. But I did appreciate the fact that when I went there, I was able to take my camera around and shoot some footage. Why don't we take a look at some of this footage? This is the cameos from, well, it's actually not the cameos in the movie, but it's the LMT members who did cameos. Several of them are in this mental ward. So you got Jesse Prince, you've got Jeff Jacobson, who was our librarian. Bob Peterson was the office manager. And also then the fourth person was our treasurer, Duncan Pierce. So let's take a look behind the scenes here at this.
So it's pretty easy. Not much emotion needed.
He's very good at that too.
Thank you.
And they're setting up to shoot this.
About being in showbiz? I think it's exciting and challenging, and I'm glad I'm up to the challenge. Yeah. We aren't really done shooting here yet.
And we won't be for hours.
Probably not.
So Bob, now that you've had a brush of Hollywood, will you be coming back to the trust?
Only Scientology can save me.
There's your star. That's the L. Ron Hubbard character, and this woman that he seduces. And I think this is all that I shot on the floor. I did go up to I did go up in the rafters and shoot a little footage down on the stage so you can see the dollies moving around and see some of the production there. And that's going to be in this next piece of video. And this is let me show you this other cameo. This is actually from the movie. Bob Minton himself had a very small part in the film. And I get a kick out of seeing Bob in this. Bob is not an actor. He never claimed to be an actor. But he was apparently not giving any direction because, he's not reacting at all in this scene. And like the Hubbard character just goes nuts and is throwing a cane around, and Bob sits there unflinching. It's good. So let's take a look at this. This is the Hubbard character showing up to the VA wanting to get extra money after the war because he had come home blind and crippled. And he was trying to convince Bob, the doctor, that there were all these ailments and you've got to, you got to write it up so that I can get some money from this. So let's take a look at this delightful scene.
By that time, Helen wanted to get married, but I still had a lot of problems, not the least of which was that I was broke. So I went to the VA to get a disability pension. Don't wait, Helen. I'll call you.
Good luck.
Now, she was good. But the timing on everything here is so slow, so lappy.
I can't seem to find anything wrong with you. And when I look through your file, I don't even see a record of combat service.
Oscar time.
You son of a bitch. You stupid son of a bitch!
And then I literally stumbled into the answer.
Oh, this was a rough cut. So this is a little temporary thing there. Ah, okay. Now I've got it. Now I have an idea. And then this is a female doctor that he seduces and then hypnotizes to steal all her work on the mind and create Dianetics from that. So you can see the excellent quality of the filmmaking there. And when it became clear that what was shot was not working, Bob asked if I would re-edit the film. He said, he asked if I took over the editing, could I turn it into a good film? And I said, well, I can make some improvements, but what's on the page is what's on the screen, and what you have to work with in the scenes that were shot is really not that great. Now, I could pare away a lot of the crappy stuff. I could certainly fix the timing of all these slow things where people are, oh, what's on the floor? Ooh, I got an idea. There's a whole hell of a lot of that kind of stuff in the film. So you can certainly pick up the tempo a bit, but unless you're doing reshoots, I don't think there's any way to turn it into a good movie. You can make it better, but it still would not have been released. And ultimately, they were going to tell Peter, Mark's going to take over. And it was decided, it's not going to be worth the fight. Peter's not going to turn the footage over to me to begin with. It would have been interesting to see what I could have done to reshape it. Having just a rough cut of the film, can't do anything with that, really. You have to look through the dailies and see if there's better shots with different reactions, and that can tighten up everything. And so it is what it is. But there's this feeling on the part of Peter and Patricia that I am vindictive and that I was out to destroy the movie. Well, no, I was just being honest. And the folks who set out and actually destroyed the movie were Peter and Patricia. Within like 3 months, they blew Bob's $2.5 million and turned out this piece of dreck. And they took it to Cannes. They had a little screening room at the Cannes Film Festival. And I believe they said one person showed up over the course of the days they were there to watch the movie. And of course, they didn't buy it. It never had a chance really to be seen anywhere except in Clearwater. In Clearwater, there's a little rundown second-run theater, not part of a chain, that was one of the early theaters where you could sit down and have a meal as you're watching the film. And because of that, the seats were really cheap. And it got a lot of second-run films. It was not a major theater, but they were happy to do the premiere of The Prophet there. The one problem was they used a piece of music in the opening credits. Sweet Dreams Are Made of These, whatever that's called. And they only had the rights to use that song in festivals or in an attempt to sell the movie. So they had to create their own human rights festival with this one movie playing to be able to put it on without getting sued. And the local newspaper, the Tampa Bay Times, and then the St. Pete Times, and some of the TV stations did some stories on it. And the reviews were scathing. As they should have been. But there were people lined up around the block to watch the film, which was just astonishing. Now, at this point, I'm living in Clearwater. Bob is living in New Hampshire, where his home is. So I went to the opening night of the screening to report back to him, hey, look, we've got people lining up around the block for multiple showings tonight. So, I mean, it was pretty impressive. And then I would catch people coming out of the theater and ask, what do you think? And they all hated it. I asked a couple of young kids who were going in for one screening, did you hear that it's not good? And he said, yeah, but I don't care. I want to see a take on Scientology. So there was an audience for the film. And I just wanted to, be there to let Bob know, okay, listen, it's doing fine here. And I have a little more footage here. This is going to show you a lot of that arc. You'll see some behind the scenes footage. a little bit on the sound stage. As I said, I was up in the rafters shooting down to see the camera dollies and all that kind of stuff. And then for the first night of shooting outdoors, they were outside of the protective shell of a sound stage. Scientology was wondering what the hell's going on. So now, the first night of shooting on location, they're shooting a scene where Hubbard and his beautiful wife that he stole from Jack Parsons arrive to give a lecture. And people are there applauding. So as soon as they shot this, Scientology knew what was going on, because they could see full on this was a Scientology-related film. And they went into overdrive. So let's take a look at this, and then it's going to end up with some footage from the newscasts. So you'll see the reaction, Scientology's reaction, and let's take a look.
Directed by Peter Alexander and produced by Patricia Greenway, The Prophet was the first film to take on the Church of Scientology.
Quiet all around, please. Marker.
This thinly veiled look at the rise of L. Ron Hubbard and his Scientology organization was filmed with a high level of secrecy. Attacks from Scientology were inevitable, but at least the first few weeks of production came off without harassment. But that would change once filming had to move outdoors.
Okay, everybody, lots of energy, lots of excitement. This is the big event. And action!
L. Ron Hubbard became Leland Conrad Powers, and Scientology was renamed the Sci-Mind Institute. Scientology knew something was afoot, but this was the night when everything became clear.
Wait till they get a load of this.
After this night, cast and crew were followed home and intimidated by Scientologists. And from then on, Scientologists would turn up at the set.
Learn anything about knowledge reports lately?
To monitor activities.
You want facts on the gentleman you work for?
And to hand out what they would call DA packs.
They just want to interrupt people from working. That's all they're doing. Look
all right,
what they're
buddy.
handing out to people.
What we would call smears.
What is this?
That's your criminal trespass.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Isn't it interesting?
Scientologists wouldn't appear on camera, but they don't deny they've protested the movie. They've handed out literature and contacted crew members.
Now, Alexander says when he was making the film, 7 private investigators followed him around.
But the biggest setback came right toward the end of production.
As soon as the Scientologists stop harassing us, these guys from the IATSE union show up. These union guys showed up just as soon as the Scientologists left.
Oh, I was in the church for 30 years. This is exactly what they do. You're thinking it's your company, and they're in there getting you guys going. I guarantee it.
And look who's watching from across the street.
The strike caused them to lose 20 members of the crew and shut down production for 3 days.
Ultimately, the film was finished, and it premiered at a small theater in Scientology's Mecca of Clearwater, Florida.
Scientific spiritualism, the road to immortality.
But the church suggests a few name changes for the movie. No hope for profit, a lack of profit, or the non-profit.
You will go forth and spread the word about Sci-Spirit.
Free lecture tonight on scientific spiritualism.
Get lost.
Scientologists say they have absolutely no interest in the film at all and will ignore it.
Well, so did the rest of the world. I hope you found that interesting. It's nice to see a lot of the different facets there that I haven't thought about in a long time. The fact that we had the union, local film union, shut down the movie at one point because there were union workers behind the scenes, and they had a strike. So you had to find some non-union people to fill in these fairly major roles in the production of the film at the last minute. Did not help with the quality of the film, but In fact, they even had to recast there was an actor who looked a lot like Tom Cruise. And I believe there's one character that changed actors midstream. I don't remember if it was him or not, but at any rate, you saw also there them handing out DA packs on the street. And this was something that that was interesting for me because as you saw in that little bit of video where the Scientologist hands me a DA pack, it had my arrest report from Chicago. I had gone up to Chicago to interview two dentists who had been defrauded out of $20,000, and they've been trying to get that money back for 2 years without success. So they called the LMT. I flew up there to do an interview with them, and while I was there, I got arrested on the public street by two police officers who had been hired by Scientology, sitting inside the org for 3 hours, getting all whipped into a frenzy about what a dangerous person I was. So the moment I arrived there and put my camera to my shoulder, they came running out the door, ran between the two dentists, grabbed me by either arm, and had me arrested. And I had to go and get booked and fingerprinted, and I had the most delightful mugshot taken. And then I was slammed behind bars for about 3 hours or so, which was plenty. I mean, I was enjoying it for 2 of those 3 hours. I was just sitting there laughing. I can't believe me. I'm in jail. Thankfully, they let me pay I think it was $60 bail, and I was on my way. But they did, as I've mentioned this before, will mention it again, as I think tomorrow I want to play the footage about the dentists. The cops had my camera in evidence lockup overnight. So I was released to 3 a.m, I think, but I had to come back later in the day to get my camera out of lockup. And when I came back for my camera, the tape had been taken from the camera, and the video was rolling the entire time the officers were arresting me. So all of that footage would have been fascinating to see, and it disappeared with the police, which was, sad, but I guess it's predictable, especially in Chicago. Any rate, more of that tomorrow. As for now, the reason I brought all that up is being handed a copy of the police report. I found out after hiring a Chicago attorney right after my arrest that in Chicago, you can't get a copy of your police report. There were laws put together back, I guess it would have been back in the 30s, because the mob was wiping out anyone who was on a witness list. So it wasn't legal for the defendant in a case to see the police report. And yet Scientology handed it to me on the street. That's the reach they had. And also by the time that I had arrived back to Clearwater 3 days later, they had gone through all the neighborhoods, talking to every business, warning everyone about how dangerous I was, that I was arrested in Chicago, and oh my God, he's a psycho. He's just storming into the building and all this nonsense. Anyway, I'd like to show you more of that footage of Richard Hurst, the Scientologist. And I don't know the name of his buddy who's here this day, but I used to see Richard Hurst quite often around Clearwater. And this is how that entire exchange happens with Patricia Greenway, the producer of the film. Again, Richard Hurst is the first fellow you're going to see here. Yeah, Richard Hurst was a
Hey,
school
Mark,
bus.
how you been? Learn anything about knowledge reports lately?
Learn anything about the criminal activities of the Church of Scientology lately?
If there were any, we'd know.
It's funny, it's the police department spent $2 million trying to prove that over how many years and not one? Give me a break.
So you're discounting Mary Sue Hubbard and the folks who went to prison?
20 years ago? Yeah, they made some mistakes.
How about the folks up in Canada in 1997 who went to prison for the same mistakes?
Don't think I know anything about that.
Well, you should check into it.
I'm sure it was...
First church in Canada to be criminally convicted. It's your church, you should be interested in finding out the facts, don't you think?
You want the facts on the gentleman you work for?
Two of us.
There you go.
And this is part of the intimidation.
Well, I hope you guys are prepared to go to jail for libel. You need to...
I would love that if you guys would sue us for libel, because everything in there that's all true.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. You know, not one person that we've ever said anything about has ever taken us, including this guy and anybody from LMT, Stacy, you know, your dope smoking buddies over there at the LMT. You know, they smoke pot. They grow pot in their homes. We know it. We say it. We say all kinds of things. But you know what? We say the truth. And nobody's ever taken us to court for libel. Why is that? Because we speak the truth, woman. And there you have it.
I am a woman,
No.
but you're not telling the truth.
Well,
That's about
telling
where
that
the truth ends, huh?
Also, no one wants
Dang, I
to
forgot
spend
that
the
number.
money to
I
take
hate
them
when
to
that
court and be buried.
Better call
Well,
Osa.
Oh, it's not OSA. It's just a funny little...
That's the power of OT for you.
It's kind of funny that you showed up here, Mark. So did you read that knowledge report, Bolin?
Isn't it funny that you showed up here?
It's actually natural that I'd show up here, stopping people like you.
Stopping? You're not stopping anything. What are you stopping? What do you think you're stopping?
I think it'll happen.
What do you think you're stopping? What do you think you're accomplishing here? Are you at cause over something?
What do you think you're...
We're working. Looks like you're not working.
I have people that work for me. I don't have to.
Oh, that's nice. So, is this why you got into Scientology? Stand around in the heat and the sidewalk?
I'm enjoying myself.
Good. They just want to interrupt people from working. That's all they're doing. They think they're doing something really special, hanging around on the sidewalk.
So you give us a lot of attention for doing nothing.
We don't like Scientologists. Really.
That's nice.
We don't like
So
the
you are
Scientologists.
religious bigots then?
That's not a religion, I'm sorry.
The Supreme Court of the United States says it
No.
is.
They
Yes,
said
the
you're tax
IRS
exempt.
is.
They said you're tax
No,
exempt.
the IRS said we're tax exempt.
You are
the
not.
Supreme Court of the United States
Oh,
does
this-
validate Scientology as a valid religion in the United States of America.
I'm sorry, but
I'm sorry.
you guys don't worship anything but money. Money and harassment, DA packs,
You know
that's
the-
your
you know
God.
the- You know the game in business. The best offense, the best defense is good offense, right? There you
Well,
have it.
you know, if a so-called church doesn't play offense and defense.
Sure they do.
No, they don't.
Sure, every one of them does.
No.
Vatican on down, woman.
You know what? Don't call me woman. That's really rude.
What's your name?
I'll let you know if I want to tell you my name.
Actually, I already know it, so that's all. I just can't remember it right now.
Well,
It wasn't
that's good.
significant enough to remember.
Well,
More of
that's
those
great.
OT abilities.
Yeah, that's what you pay the big bucks for, isn't it? Well, this is quite a dossier they've put together here.
I wanted to let you know Mr. Bunker showed up. It's kind of humorous.
Wow, wow, wow. Listen to
This Cameron and the woman, I forgot her name. You know.
Mark Bunker
Yeah.
is fighting for truth. He goes wherever Scientology goes.
Yeah, no,
to
I
other
understand.
people.
It's kind of humorous. I thought it was quite funny. I thought I'd call and tell you. Yep. Yep.
KRs are so important,
No.
aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's odd that I would
Okay.
show up.
All right. All right, well. No.
Here, Mark.
Ineffectual. Yep.
Look
All right,
what they're
buddy.
handing out to people.
What is this?
That's your criminal trespass.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? event 118771. Now, they are such a church that they spend their time accumulating all this information.
You have to when you have enemies.
You know what? If you would just look,
That's not the truth.
if you would just look, you'd find out that we're not enemies. If you would just look. You're told stuff.
No, I've seen stuff for the 27 years I've been a card-carrying e-meter total Scientology. And,
Well,
you know, it started a lot of lies back in the early 50s, propagated by Interpol and other people that went to the IRS and various things. And,
were you there for that? For the Interpol stuff?
oh, I've seen the yeah, I was actually part of it toward the end when they started doing some of the...
So you were there when the Guardian's office infiltrated the FBI and the IRS then?
I was actually not in Scientology.
But you were there when the Interpol was doing this?
Toward the end of the thing, when they were actually getting the Nazis out of the Interpol and they got them kicked out, yeah.
You thought there were
and I
Nazis
was there.
in Interpol?
They were, proven. And the Interpol acknowledged it. Interpol apologized for all the misinformation, and they went to the work to actually go back through and disseminate correct information about Scientology, which is one reason why the IRS allowed us.
Well, let me ask you
Let's do
something. I really do have this question, and I've always wondered about this. Since we're on a break, I guess I can talk. You guys follow L. Ron Hubbard. He's your source, correct?
He's the source of the data.
He's the source of the data.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you're following this guy, and like if you have marital problems, you go for your 2D co-audit, right? You go for all your technical stuff concerning 2D relationships. Do you think he was a proper authority on the 2D relationships?
I'm sure he had some rough times. Everybody does on the second dynamic. I know you're having your times.
I'm not having any times.
Your boyfriend or whatever maybe.
I'm having the time of my life. I work. I love my life. So I'm not having any problems.
I'm sure you did have, though, because everybody has on the second dynamic. It's kind of a crazy dynamic, isn't it?
Well, everybody does. But my question to you is...
It sure is.
My question to you is, everybody has 2D problems. But my question to you is, are you aware that he was a bigamist?
I'm not necessarily sure that's true. I know Mark's tried to lay that on me, and it may be true. You know,
Well,
maybe he had some
if I
problems.
showed you documents that were taken through the Freedom of Information Act, would you believe that they were true? That he was married at one time and wasn't divorced till sometime later?
You know, maybe he did do something like that. So freaking what?
Well, see,
You know,
I have a
we
problem.
all make mistakes.
Okay, everybody makes
Ellery's
mistakes.
make mistakes.
Let me ask
I
you
make
this:
mistakes.
what do you think about the time that he threw the kid in the chain locker?
Not sure I'm buying it. You know?
You don't believe that he would do that to a kid. How about all the children that he fathered and he just denounced and disconnected
You make
from?
it sound like it's 30 or 40.
No, but considering that he had children that he didn't even acknowledge, do you think that's a good example? I'm asking because I'm really seriously interested in how somebody wouldn't question a guy giving advice that
Well, I'll tell you
couldn't
what.
take his own advice.
I'll tell you what. That was maybe early on in his life, and he had a lot of research to do, and he had to come up with a lot of things. And he did. Basically, when he got straightened out, maybe he had some things to straighten out. I don't know. He was human. He wasn't a god or anything. He still isn't. He made some mistakes, maybe. Maybe he did some of those things. I don't know. But I do know that when you take his technology and you apply it standardly, it does work. I have done many studio co-eds on people. I have, helped. I can think of 6 off the top of my head where the marriages were ready to just go, bam. And I put them back together, and they're still together.
Maybe if that's a credit to you as a person and your own abilities. I don't think it's across the board because there's far too many divorces in Scientology.
Really? You have the statistics on that, huh?
No, I don't. But just from the number of Scientologists that I know, they're not too happy with how their 2D co-audits
I've
went.
been a Scientologist.
So I
my
think
second marriage, and I did get divorced once as a Scientologist.
that's normal.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, I think it's probably more of a credit to you and your abilities to communicate with people than the tech. Maybe you have a better line to people.
And usually the co-audit thing isn't necessarily to put them back together always either. It's to help them split up amicably if they don't align as a 2D,
What do you
which sometimes happens. Ellery says
let me
himself.
ask you this. What do you think about the fact that when they tell you to disconnect from somebody who is not interested in Scientology?
That's false data. No ethics officer within Scientology would tell you to disconnect from anyone unless you yourself wanted to. No one would make you do that.
Well, let me
There
tell you.
is a
Here's the
policy.
loophole. Here's
No,
the loophole. They say
go right
if
ahead.
you want to go further up the bridge, otherwise you're going to be PTS to this SP.
Well,
And
somebody's PTS to an SP, they can't go further
well,
up the bridge.
but if it's your family, I'm sorry, but that's the way family is.
I have never, and I've been in Scientology 27 years, I've been on all the lines, I've been on staff, never seen a forced separation of a family in the entire time, except in Germany, when the Germans forced through their little religious things, families apart, different things by. You have never seen that forced ever.
Them tell somebody to get a
Never.
divorce from somebody.
No.
Would you believe me if I told you that David Miscavige asked his own mother and father to get divorced?
You might have.
I don't believe he asked. He told them.
Yeah, he told them. He told them that they had to get a divorce. That was a demand.
He was pro dad and against mom, or what?
His dad had just been. Accidents, mistakes happen. He had just raped a woman in Philadelphia. His father.
That's not an accident. That's
okay.
Criminal activity.
Well, he sent his father off into the Sea Org. He didn't send his father away. He sent him off into the Sea Org.
Hopefully into the RPF. That would have maybe handled him.
Well, if you think of that handles it. How about the guy? What's his name? Strawn. What was his name? The guy who was molesting his children, the Scientologist, and they kept telling the wife to keep it quiet and that they would handle it, and he wasn't handled. He continued molesting the children.
Sounds like a big mistake if it really happened. But then, what about the Protestant who killed his psychiatrist?
No, but I'm just talking
about all those
the
kinds
tech
of things?
isn't perfect. The
People
tech is
come
not
into
perfect.
Scientology at a level. Patty, they come into Scientology.
I've
at
never
a level.
called Patty.
Well, whatever. Patricia. Is that better?
Yeah, I'm Patricia.
They come into a Scientology at a level. Now, maybe this gentleman, if this did happen, maybe he was new to Scientology. Maybe he hadn't gotten a lot of help or relief from the
Been in for about
anxieties.
15 years.
I seriously doubt it.
And they told her not to call the police, that they would handle it. He continued molesting their children. And now that you can look at the police records on that, you just go to the police. It was in Clearwater, wasn't it? Wasn't it in Clearwater?
Whatever happened,
Go
it
to
must
the
have been a big
Clearwater
mistake.
PD.
Big
But
mistake
you got to
that happened.
understand that you can't say across the board that this stuff works. First, you got to acknowledge
It does
that.
if it's applied correctly.
Well, except
and it
for
does if the person
Okay.
isn't so deranged to begin with.
Then let me ask
that
you
they
this.
can't be gotten to.
Let me ask
which
you
does
this.
happen.
With stats being so incredibly important,
They're not.
they're extremely important to the auditors. They have to run through auditing pretty heavily. They're stressed.
You haven't misunderstood.
No, I saw them. They are stressed. They are sweating bullets trying to get through all the auditing that they have to do.
The policy that you're actually trying to operate off of there is called the admin scale, and stats is kind of very low on that. Goals, purposes, projects, plans, those are more important statistics. Statistics are used only to monitor a person's production. And it's used, IBM actually has sent employees to the Hubbard College to learn the technology
But what happens
for that.
to these staff people that are not making their stats? They're suffering.
No, I was on staff for 10 years. I didn't suffer. I had some hard times. I actually went through a court of ethics, but then I was out ethics. I had some shit going on that shouldn't have been going on. So I got my ethics, handled.
Do you not believe that you can generate your own level of ethics?
Absolutely you can. That's what the whole thing about
So
ethics, it's a personal thing.
why do you need somebody to handle your ethics?
If you're in a group,
yeah.
If you're in a group and you're associated with a group and that group is working toward a common goal and purpose, that group's ethics level is set by the ethics of the person with the lowest ethics level in that group.
That's not necessarily true.
Potentially just right in there.
No, that's not
That's
necessarily
pretty true.
Let me tell you, in a work environment, you say you have a business, in a work environment, you can have one person that it stands out like a sore thumb that he's not, and you get rid of him, and everybody is fine.
Sure. So in Scientology, we don't get rid of people, we help them.
Well, you do get rid of people.
We help. No, not really.
You
Put them in
do.
the RPF.
Well,
and we help them actually come out of it. My sister went through the RPF. I have an excellent friend in Seattle who was in the Sea Org for 23 years. Went through the RPF.
I tell you what.
Aren't you with the LMT now?
Yes, I am.
He works for the trust.
You work for the trust?
Yeah.
He's their
I thought this
videographer.
thing had nothing to do with the trust.
It doesn't, but I invited him over because we had Scientologists here.
So why are you here today?
We are members of the Foundation for Religious Tolerance.
And what does that have to do with being here today?
We feel that this particular film that's being made is being made from a viewpoint of religious bigotry. We get that concept from various data, but mostly the main concept would be that Bob Minton is funding it. And Bob Minton, well, we all kind of have our opinion of Bob. So, there you have it.
There you have it indeed. All right. I hope you found that interesting. I used to run into Richard Hurst at council meetings long before I ran for office. I would go to the council meetings and get up at the end of the meeting to do my little 3 minutes about Scientology. And he was often there to counter me. In fact, that's one of the things that the PR people of Scientology made sure to do, that at every council meeting, there'd have to be some loyal Scientologists there who can get up and kind of rebut anything that a critic might say. No, I'm not going to say it. I don't want to divulge anyone who may have turned to the LMT at one point. He didn't, but I'll just leave it at that. So I believe I've covered everything that I wanted to cover on this. It's a shame that the film was not a success. It's a shame that the making of the film caused this huge rift between folks who were friends. Peter and Patricia and Bob and Stacy were inseparable friends, it seemed, until all of this came about. And Patricia, in large part, was the problem that tore everyone apart. She spent all of her time, instead of making sure the film was better, she spent her time attacking Stacy and how she was running the LMT. Well, I'm sorry, Patricia. In 3 months, you blew through $2.5 million. Stacy was nowhere near as incompetent as that. And it was rather frustrating to see the lengths that Patricia was going to try to subvert anything that the LMT was trying to do. At any rate, there's one story I told here before, but I should probably mention it again. I saw a rough cut of the film, at least half of the movie, over at Peter and Patricia's home. They invited me over with a friend of mine, and we watched what was completed at that time, roughly half of it. And I could see that, oh my God, this is the disaster that I thought it was going to be. And I believe I watched the whole thing through one other time. And then after that, we went to Germany for one of the times that Bob Minton was either receiving a humanitarian award or he was presenting an award to Dr. Norbert Bloom. It was one of those trips. And as part of that trip, Peter and Patricia brought over the movie and they set up a screening for all the European critics to see it. And in the makeshift theater where it was being showed, there was no air conditioning. It was unbearably hot and miserable inside the theater where people were watching this. I'd seen it already. I knew what was coming. I said, I want to get out of here and just walk outside where it's a little cooler. And I walked through the streets of Leipzig thing. I'm in Germany. Leipzig is wonderful. I'm so much happier out here looking at the city than sitting in there watching that awful movie again. Well, before the film was over, I came back to the theater and Patricia was waiting for me in the lobby of the theater. And she wanted to know why I walked out of the movie. And I explained, well, I've seen it already and it's hot in there. So I wanted to see some of Leipzig. So she was not pleased with that. but then we got talking about the fact that Patricia had been smearing Stacy behind her back constantly, time after time. Somebody would report back to the Lisa McPherson Trust of Bob and Stacy. Well, Patricia was saying all these horrible things about you. And then Bob or Stacy would call her and she'd say, no, it wasn't me. I never did that. Finally, when we were in the lobby together, I said, it's just insane that you're going so out of your way to constantly attack Stacy. And Patricia confessed to me that, yeah, she was doing that. And I said, well, you should apologize to Stacy and make up. She said, nope. She's going to have to prove I did it. Prove you did it. You're confessing that, yes, you're doing it. And yet she has to have some unshakable proof for you. It was just damning. I just couldn't fathom being that way. So our relationship was pretty much severed by all of this nonsense. And it's a shame. It really is a shame. If the film had turned out to be absolutely horrible as it did, they could have remained friends, but not with Patricia's ego in the way. So, and I try not to say negative things about people, but I saw I saw the impact of somebody trying to subvert everything that you're doing. And attacks from your friends are oftentimes so much harder to take than attacks from your enemies. So Scientology can say something. Okay, that's what Scientology does. But when somebody's your friend doing that, that hurts a lot more. Anyway, and that's one of the reasons why I try not to get involved in flame wars anymore. It was fun 25 years ago to kind of drive somebody nuts online, but it's a waste of time. And I'm a mighty OT now. I'm a natural OT, past life OT. So I don't have to do all those things anymore. I'm above the rest of you. Mere mortals. Do you have any questions about this? Anything you want to talk about? Because I've been yakking. Fuzzy became a member. Thank you, Fuzzy. Appreciate everybody who's going over to my YouTube channel and becoming a member. I'm rolling out some new things. There's going to be a lot of special stuff that I will put up for members only, at least originally. And there's 3 different levels. You can be a bunkinetics practitioner. You can be a bunkology follower, or you can be a past life SP. It's up to you. For the highest level, I will make you a personalized video, either about you or to your specifications, if there's a topic or something you want to be covered. At any rate, your support would be appreciated. Daddy's got bills to pay, and it would be a big help. OTSP, what aren't I? I'm just a remarkable human being. What can I say? So thank you, everyone. Was Patricia Osa? No, she was not. She was just a pain. I've seen this question before. I heard Jesse Prince say that Stacy went back to Scientology. No, she didn't. What happened when Bob was trying to get out from under the thumb of Scientology, and my God, they had a global campaign to silence Bob. Stacy did everything she could to help Bob unravel from this situation. She testified in a trial. There was a moment when Bob had met with the Scientologist attorneys. He and Stacy went to sit down with the attorneys, and he threw up in the bushes before going into the building to talk to them. The idea was to settle everything except the Lisa McPherson case. But all the other cases that Bob had been funding, like the Jerry Armstrong lawsuit, Bob bought Jerry Armstrong not a typewriter, but a computer so he could make postings online, breaking Scientology's injunction. And because of that, they hit him with a lawsuit, millions of dollars for allowing Jerry to have a computer. So he was peppered with a lot of these suits. And they had this global campaign where at the end they froze his money. So he had no access to the money that he had in the banks. And that's when he said, okay, I got to get out of this. And so he sat down with Scientology and said, all right, here's what's going on. This is what's happened with the Lisa McPherson case. And there were a couple things that should not have happened. Like Bob had been funding the civil suit, and Ken Dandar, the attorney who was running that suit, Bob was paying him. And there was some money that was contributed to the case that did not get reported properly, and it was kind of put into Dan's personal account. Not that he spent it, just that it was commingled the way it shouldn't have been, and he kind of hid the fact from his trial consultant that he actually had money that he could have paid him with. And Michael Garco, the consultant who had been working for free for at least a year, when he found out about that, he went ballistic, and he went to Scientology as well to say, okay, here's what I know about what's going on with the Lisa McPherson case. Nothing that was terrible, but things that could certainly be used to go against the attorney and the case. And what wound up happening is what should have or would have happened from the get-go if Bob hadn't invested millions of dollars into it. The family would have reached a settlement with Scientology. Where Scientology could have been held accountable was in the criminal case. It's the first church ever criminally convicted for the death of one of its parishioners. And Scientology put everything they had into derailing that case. So when that died, then it was up to the family's civil suit to try to get some justice out of Scientology. But again, that was just money. And what wound up after Bob and Stacy testified, that they, Bob said, and you can read the article in the paper about his testimony, where he said, I just need to get out of this. This is too hard. I can't do this anymore. But he was truthful on the stand. Stacy went a little overboard in her testimony, trying to, it was like night and day from what she was saying in the affidavits about how Scientology was responsible for Lisa's death and all this kind of stuff. And then when she got on the witness stand, she was saying things like, the people who were watching over Lisa were trying to help her. Those people on the baby watch. Well, yeah, that's true. They were. They were following what L. Ron Hubbard said should be done. They were doing the nonsensical, insane things that Hubbard did because they thought that was the proper thing to do. But because Stacy was so adamant in trying to save Bob, I think there were a lot of people who saw that this was, this was a bridge too far. I didn't think it was, but I could understand their feelings. But she never went back to Scientology. She never started taking courses again. She was not on lines. But I will say that right before Bob died, I did get him in touch with Mike Rinder. Rinder had developed a friendship with Bob as he was trying to help Bob get extricated from this whole thing with Scientology. And they actually did develop a kind of friendship during that period. And they hadn't talked in a couple of years. So I put them in touch, and they did talk on the phone, and Mike and also the fellow who was out at that point, Marty Rathbun, they were planning to go over to Ireland to see Bob and Stacy. But Bob died before they had a chance to get there. So, life is wacky. But ultimately, as I said, if Bob had not been involved with the case, the Lisa McPherson case, the family would have reached a settlement. And that's exactly what happened when, at the end, they had to sit down and they got a hefty settlement. I've only heard rumors about what it was, but it was like $5 million is what I understand. But, don't quote me on that, even though I just put it online, because I don't know if that's the case or not. But they got a decent settlement, and all that was under lock and key. So it was more important for me to see that Bob survive, because there were dark times there toward the end where I wasn't sure whether I had moved up to New Hampshire after the LMT closed, and I was still continuing to build the LMT website up there. The rest of the trust was shut down, but we were going to exist still as a website, as a clearinghouse of information. So I kept that going for a year. But while I was there working out of Bob's barn, he had a 200-year-old barn with a nice modern office up in the loft there. So I worked out of there, but every time I came over, every day I was wondering if this was the day that Bob was going to kill himself, because he was so stressed out about all this stuff. So I was happy to see him survive that. And I know it's not an ending that that folks would have wanted for the story. I don't think any of us did, but it is what it is. You take on Scientology, and it's tough. Bob gave it his all, and they had a global campaign that brought him to his knees. So I'm just glad that he was able to have a little piece there toward the end. New member, hooray! Does it matter? Thank you. I appreciate that. Folks, become a member. It's fun and exciting. Also, like, subscribe, ring that bell. It all adds up. I appreciate your support. I've got a lot of other stuff that I'm working on. And as you see, I've been mastering the art of AI much more than I'm mastering, running a live stream. But I've got a lot of fun things that are in the works for that as well. Any other comments? Don't forget my question at Mark Bucker. Where is it? I'm not sure that I saw it. Is it up here? New member? Nope. Okay, remind me, what question is this? All right. Well, I'm not sure that I'm seeing the question, but if you can point me to it, I'd be happy to answer it. In the meantime, Bunkinetics, yes. We're going to go into the history of Bunkinetics. For the folks who are members right now, I did put up, the book covers for both the modern Bunkinetics, the modern science of spotting bunk, and its original 1950 edition, which is classic. In fact, I believe that I'll have the back cover ready to put up later tonight with more, wise wisdom from L. Ron Bunker. So if you become a member, you get to see those things first. Bunkinetics, that you'll be hearing a lot of the history of that, and also the Church of Bunkology. We're going to have a series of prayer sessions inspired by when. Here's a question. Inspired by when. I see the other question too, Kelly. Thank you. Inspired by when Scientology's PR person, Pat Harney, used to come and give a prayer at the opening of some of the Clearwater meetings. Well, I'm going to start doing that with some Church of Bunkology things. And you just take a piece of writing and put amen at the end of it, apparently. And, that's all it takes to make anything a prayer. So we'll test that out with the Church of Bunkology. Do I have any advice for today's protesters? I would give the advice that I gave to Anonymous. I don't know that it necessarily matters because there's a whole new generation doing different things. My urging to Anonymous way back in 2008 when they came out, do I know about the film elements for the Prophet? I believe they're still in the hands of Peter and Patricia. But when Anonymous came out, there were all these people online saying, we're going to do all these horrible, nasty things. We're going to go to the parking lot. We're going to put salt in the gas tanks or sugar or whatever. And I said, don't do anything illegal. They can take a cherubic choir boy like me and paint us as horrible criminals. And, this is serious. They play hardball, Scientology. So what the Anonymous was saying is, well, one of us falls, 10 will rise. Well, that's great for the 10 of you who rise. But if one person is sent to prison, that's serious for fun and games. And it happened. There were at least 2 Anonymous members who got, at least one of them was a year in jail for nonsense. And I didn't want to see that happen. So I was urging people to be peaceful and, don't attack the low-level members. If you're calling and making crank calls and to the orgs, well, the poor girls who are or young guys in the Sea Org who are answering the phones, they don't know what's going on. I don't think that really makes a difference. And I said, what would be effective is, a peaceful protest. And I shared what Jeff Jacobson was always advising, using Gandhi tech, make the Scientologists look like the bad ones. Don't go out of your way to be the jerk. Let them. And that was successful. And Anonymous, every month they had a new protest, and they found a fun theme for it, like the Sea Arg, where they all dressed up like pirates all around the world, thousands of them coming to sing chanties and give a little pirate speech. In one video in LA, my cameraman got a shot of me going "Arg" in response. So they had fun, and still Scientology did what they're doing still today. They were following all these young kids who were in their masks. They were following them home, finding out who they are, writing letters to their parents, warning them about how dangerous the folks were that they were dealing with. All this nonsense and getting people in trouble. And I'm sure a lot of that is still going on today. But what's happening now is you've got all these people doing live streams. There are cameras everywhere. And Scientologists are in hiding. So any advice that I give, probably, I think it's good advice, but, I hated to see when people were getting arrested on the streets of Hollywood, especially like Aaron. That's nuts. I don't think you need to do that. Of course, you get a lot of hits, a lot of attention, and getting people interested in watching your stream, that no matter who you are, that's important. So I'm not going to say to anyone, hey, don't do this, don't do that. But I think it's fascinating to see how everything's evolved. And the fact that there's so many people now who can just do what I'm doing, turning on a camera and talking and sharing and having a conversation like this is pretty remarkable. Let's see. Other questions here that I missed? I think there were. Oh, can we get a live stream with that lady who used to scream at me? I think you're probably talking about Mary DeMoss, the kind of skinny gal, dark hair, who was like the leader of the SP committee. I would love to have her on, but she doesn't want to go on camera. She doesn't want to talk about it. We had one text exchange where she felt that she was being abused by critics and by Scientology, and she had left Scientology, but she wasn't going to speak out. And then, she told me that when she was coming and saying all these horrible things to me on the street in front of my camera, she never, ever contemplated the fact that this would be going online for people all around the world to see. And I suppose if you're living a sheltered life in Scientology, where you're told don't go on the internet and look at negative things about Scientology, you might not realize the reach something like that back in 2000 would have. And yet still, that's those videos are being seen. I personally, I told her I think it would be great if you came on camera and all you would have to say, two of us are together, you can say, I'm out. And that should be it. People would cheer. But it is not something she's interested in doing. And I wish her well. Other questions? Other questions? Oh, here's the one that I saw before. Do you see any value in people attending, calling into council meetings to discuss Scientology? Well, right now, they're not letting you do that. The new council has gone nuts, and they put a moratorium on comments from folks who don't live within the Clearwater area. Because we had the armed fisherman coming and being a jerk and just disrupting meetings. And when I was there, I was the only one who said, listen, they have the right to speak. I disagree completely with the way they're doing it. But let them have the 3 minutes to talk, to vent, say what they want to say, and then they'll leave. But the council, other council members, I was the only one who voted for free speech. The other ones started putting restrictions on who could talk and how, which never worked. And the mayor at the time was thin-skinned, and he would pound the gavel and kick people out and have people arrested. And that only made things worse because more people would see those videos and they'd come back the next meeting. And so it became really chaotic. And I had the chance to run the final meeting. The mayor wasn't there, so as vice mayor, I got to chair the meeting. And those guys showed up, and I told them beforehand, listen, I'm going to let you talk. Just say your 3 minutes and leave. And that's what they did. We heard some uncomfortable truths, and then some very uncomfortable lies. You know, that's all part of it. You listen as an elected official. It's your job to hear what people are saying and consider it. You don't have to always agree with it, but maybe something will get through. Anyway, that's my policy on it. So now this new council, with me as the lone holdout, they decided, let's for 3 months, let's stop anybody from coming in who doesn't live in this county and talking unless there's something on the agenda. So unless Scientology is on the agenda, which it, probably never will be again, you're not permitted to talk about Scientology. I wouldn't be able to go in and talk about something that was off topic. So I think that's wrong. And they voted on it to make that permanent this past, I guess just a couple of days ago, but I haven't watched the meeting, so I don't know if they made it permanent or not. But at any rate, when you come in and talk, it's, I think it's good that somebody hears, and that what you're saying is at least going out on video so the world can see it and it's in the record. So just making a public record of it, I think is important enough. Are they ever going to act on it? Well, for 4 years, I was urging them to take action on Scientology, and we didn't get very far. It's very hard to actually get something done. Greg, they're in Scientology's pockets. No, that's not true. Nobody there is on the payroll. Nobody likes Scientology in City Hall. It's just something that is impossible to deal with. What do you do now that they've purchased virtually every single building? The last set of buildings up for grabs were sold to Scientology, including the building that currently houses City Hall. And they're not going to do it. Scientology is not going to do anything to put anything in those buildings because they don't want anything in those buildings. They want to keep people away. It's their campus, for God's sakes. So they're just trying to sabotage us. And they waited until I lost the election before those final buildings the next day were sold to Scientologists. I am happy to say, though, that against the mayor's wishes at the time, and this caused Mayor Frank Hubbard to quit in the middle of a meeting when we said, yes, we want to go ahead with a new city hall that has been, the money's been set aside to pay for it since, I think, 2017. We finally said, yes, let's do it. And we're breaking ground on that new city hall on the 2nd of next month. So I'll be there attending that groundbreaking ceremony. And thank God we agreed to do this, because you don't want Scientology owning City Hall, which is what they do now. That the city is in a building where the city's leasing 2 floors of now a Scientologist-owned building. That is not good. So hopefully later this year, there'll be a new city hall. And somebody asked if I was planning to run again. I might. It's tough to say. We'll find out about, what it looks like when it gets closer to the next election. I'd like to run again. But one thing that that did happen with this last election, besides me getting voted out of office, was the rules were changed for voting here now. So the person, like I won just having the most out of 5 people's votes. There were 5 of us in the race. I had the most, so I won. But they've changed it now. So if you don't get 50%, there's a runoff. So the top 2 people have to spend months and tons more money to pay for a runoff election to try to get into office. It makes it a lot harder, and it makes it easier for the folks who have money to buy their way into office. And that is certainly what we had to face with this last election, where, we raised like $55,000 or $57,000, I think, for my race, which is astonishing. My first race, I think we total raised like 15,000, something like that. So with Aaron's help, well, Aaron pretty much did the whole thing. We raised enough money to fight the fight. But it was a race where only Republican voters were coming out, essentially. And the Republican Party backed a slate of candidates and put money into that race that dwarfed anything that we had. So people would tell us, "Look, Mark, we haven't seen any of your mailers." And every day we get mailers from these other candidates. They had enough money to send out daily mailers, which is expensive. But the 3 people that the Republican Party put their money into, those were the people who won. And especially because Biden wasn't on the ballot, there weren't any Democratic voters really that interested in making an extra trek out there. So the fact that I got within 600 votes was pretty remarkable all in all. And it's a shame. I wish I were still there. And Kelly, you're right. They stole my signs. That got us a little bit of publicity. But I'll tell you this: I was concerned about that. The fact that we were able to turn it into a news story in the paper and on TV, that helped get some publicity out there. But in the race, there was one fella. Were there 3 of us in the race? 3 or 4? I don't remember. Anyway, the person who had the most signs by far came in dead last in the race against me. And this was a fellow who had the backing of the former mayor. He had recruited him to run against me and say that he's going to be against Scientology to take some votes away from me. This guy had his ugly mug pasted everywhere around town, dwarfing any amount of signs I had. So just having signs on the street, it was proven that's not the game changer that I was worried that it would be. So, we'll see what the race looks like next time. I'd kind of like to run again. I'd like to get back into office and see if I could reclaim the throne and try to make a difference. And I'd be the lone voice of reason at this point. As far as somebody asked about eminent domain, we had talked about that. The city attorney was really sincere in saying this is something we can do. If this is something the city wants to do, there are valid reasons for us taking some of the property downtown to use for parking for example, is there is a need for parking. And of course, you have to pay Scientology the cost of the property that you'd be seizing for eminent domain. And they would sue. So you'd have to spend money fighting that. But he felt this is a winnable fight because there's a legitimate need for it. But the thing with eminent domain, which is something that I didn't really know before taking office, was at least here in Florida, when you use that, what is built there in its place has to be something for the public. So you can't say, okay, thanks for giving us this property, and now we want to bring in Sears Roebuck if they're still in existence, or put up an Apple store there. No, you can't give it to a business or anything like that. You can do like a parking structure, because parking is for the public good and it's a public necessity. And with the parking structure, you can have ground floor retail. So you can do some of that. But by and large, the widespread use of eminent domain is not going to be the ground changer. I think it's good to plant your flag and say, listen, we're not afraid of using the legal resources we have to fight back, and we need this property. You don't. Let's see. Anything here that I missed? What is David Miscavige like? He's tiny. Yeah, that's my insight. He's tiny. Oh, that's something that I was meaning to play for you. Maybe, I was planning to do a whole thing on AI, and we did, yesterday when I was playing like the planetary anthem for Marcab and things like that. I was going to make, as part of that, some campaign videos that I had put together that were never used. I had an app that allowed you to create an AI version of Trump, Biden, Obama, and one other celebrity. So I had them endorse me, and it was painful. It was obvious. I mean, it's not like the video that I've been putting up here, which is, in many cases very remarkable. This was clearly horrible footage that was being recycled. So you'd see it jump back to, there was like 20 seconds worth of footage, and then it would jump back to the opening shot again. And poor quality. And you can see, well, this isn't true. And to have these national figures saying, Mark Bunker's the person you got to vote for. I think clearly this is not going to cause any disruption to the force. However, I did put up one of them temporarily. I put it up very briefly on YouTube. It was one with Trump that I thought was very funny. And there were a couple of comments, AI, Mark, you shouldn't be doing that. And then somebody else said, I heard that Mark endorsed Trump. What, did that happen? No, Trump endorsed me, and it wasn't really Trump. So I thought, okay, well, this is clearly more confusing than I thought it would be. So I took it down right away. But now that the campaign's over and we can put it in context, I thought it might be fun to play those because, it is amusing to hear them all pitching me. But it could have been the thing that would have put me over the top, to have the endorsement of every key player. Anyway. Am I going to have fun for mayor again? Or you mean, am I going to run for mayor? I did not run for mayor. I ran for city council. I was vice mayor for 1 year. And I would like to do that again, but we'll see. There's, I think next year, late next year is when the race would begin for the 26 election. Is Kevin Hart shorter than Miscavige? I haven't seen them back to back, but I'm assuming that Miscavige has got to be shorter. I think he's a tiny wee person. I think he would have to get on a stool to kind of tower over Kevin Hart. Did DM tell cops giving him a ticket that his height is including his shoe lifts? I don't think so. But I can't imagine that anyone gave Slappy a parking ticket. Parking structures in hurricane areas? Well, yeah, oddly enough, people do have parking structures in hurricane areas, and they're built to withstand hurricanes more than most other things, many other things that are built here. It's not an insane idea to have them. Although it's, never going to be safe for you to park your car in them during a hurricane. Try to get them, if it's near the water, try to get them out of the flood zone. But then if we get a major hurricane, which luckily we have not had, there's something brewing right now. I don't know if that's going to be aiming for us or not yet. When I was watching the news earlier, they weren't sure which direction it was going to go, but we're going to be hit someday with something devastating. We have managed to barely escape that twice while I was in office. But it is scary. It is very, very scary nowadays. Vote, register to vote. Yes, thank you. Absolutely important. Register and vote. I don't care who you vote for, although I do really, but I'm not going to be mentioning her name. But it is important to vote. All right. I don't know, Kelly, are there other people I'm missing here? I think I'm boring you to tears by just sitting here and rambling. And I don't want to do that. We've gone on far longer than I expected. I thought, well, we'll get this done within an hour. But I appreciate the fact that you're asking questions. I'm happy to share what I can with you. But I think perhaps now would be a good time for Xenu TV to sign off. I will say this, though. I have a little something for you as the new sign-off for Xenu TV. We'll see if this works. You get one question here. I used to go out with Aaron to local restaurants. Would we do some of these again? Yeah, I think both of us had said we'd be happy to do them. He's got such a busy schedule with all the videos he's doing. But I'd be thrilled to do that. And we can do it live now. I was used to taking it back and, as is my want, I would give it some production value, do some editing, get some B-roll of the footage and turn it into something. But this is the new way to go. Just turn on the camera, have a meal, and chat. So that is something that absolutely we should do again. But anyway, I will leave you with this. We had the debut just yesterday of the planetary anthem for Markab, Heart of Markab. And it's a delightful song. There was also a recording done by the Men's Markabian Choir that gives it a little bit different thrust. And I don't have the whole song here, but I'm going to use this as a sign-off. So let's see how this works. I will just say goodnight to you, and see you tomorrow. We'll do this again, probably at 10 o'clock, if that's okay with you. I don't know what's good for everybody, but it kind of works for me. I figured a lot of the people who have been doing them throughout the day will be tired, need a break. So I'm going to sign off and leave you with the Markabian Men's Choir.
Come to my castle, sunshine bright.